Hello, everybody, and welcome back to that Milan podcast. Quick recording today. We just went live on the channel, so be sure and go to check that out for the live reaction against the loss against Torino. As you can tell by the title, we're just overviewing the past couple of losses and just a little slightly deeper dive on the Bologna match, but not really because these matches have pretty much all been the same. Again, subscribe to us if you have not already. Again, subscribe to that Milan podcast channel. The link is in the description for YouTube there. So again, be sure and to do that. Anyways, I'm Martino. This is Matt. If you're here, you're probably a regular because I don't know why anyone new would want to be watching new content at this moment in time. But if you're new, welcome. Sorry for your losses the past three go rounds, but we're here to talk about it. So yeah, we haven't done a podcast since the since the Bologna and Lazio matches. And I went on Milan Fan TV, which is just a huge TikTok account. I went on their podcast, and James is the host of it, and James had basically asked me. Well, we were both in agreement on what was going down for these three matches that had just transpired between Torino, Bologna, and Lazio. I felt horrible about all of them. I could see us losing all of them. Milan lost all of them, and in fashions in which are so decrepit, disgraceful, and miserable. To see Milan go down 1-0 against Torino very early on an own goal and then end up losing because they're not paying attention on a quickly taken free kick to lose 2-1 to Torino was one thing. Then they go again to face Bologna. Milan go up 1-0. Great job by Rafael Leao, essentially creating something out of nothing. Then the second half starts. Terrible job, maybe on a semi-quasi-fugazi call with Fabian's quote-unquote handball. Castro puts it away. Milan are drawing at that point 1-1. Then towards the end of the match, Dan Ndoye ends up scoring the winner. Milan lose to Bologna. We'll get into the Lazio one, but just to speak on the Bologna one, just a total mental lapse once again. Just losing control. Really poor quality all around in that one. There's not really much to discuss as far as the Bologna match goes. I know you had a good discussion with Matteo Bonetti and others on Twitter Spaces about it. But your kind of thoughts on that entire Bologna match as a whole?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think as you mentioned the discussion with Matteo Benetti, I think you guys can still probably listen to it. So if you guys have any interest, I can share it. But yeah, pretty much we were both in agreement that the issues at this club are much deeper than just simply player X is not playing well or the coach is not doing X, Y, and Z with his tactics, with his selections. There's a lot of things wrong with this team, and I think you've seen it quickly, and things have gotten really bad. And this is not too long ago. We brought in Sergio Conceição after a string of miserable results. We get that initial bump and bounce from him in the Super Cup, and everyone's like, okay, we got our coach. We have a half season. Maybe we can do something. And if nothing else, maybe we go into the summer and at least we know we have a coach. We have some sort of identity forged, and the market as well was pretty favorable. But you're seeing over the stretch of these last three games, and it dates before then, the miserable games against Feyenoord and obviously the match against Zagreb, which led to the Feyenoord debacle. This team, there's a lot wrong. The players' attitudes, the lack of leadership,
Yes.
the lack of accountability, the timing of certain interviews. I'm speaking about Zlatan, of course. Not that the interview happened last week, but it came out last week, and the timing of it couldn't be worse.
Yeah.
Couldn't be worse. It's just kind of like a stain and a weird look on this team right now who is playing dreadful football. They're going nowhere fast. They sit ninth at the time of recording after the defeat to Lazio, which we will get into, as Martino just mentioned. When you're not sharp in the certain areas of the sport that you'd expect from players representing AC Milan, the minimum, right? I'm not talking about pulling off a Trivella goal or a Rabona goal or the impossible. I'm talking about simple fundamentals when it comes to defending. I'm talking about if you foul a player in a dangerous area, you surround him so he can't get a free kick off at all. Or you simply just get back into defensive position and you don't let the opportunity for a goal transpire. I'm talking Malik Chow, and I'm talking Alex Jimenez, and I'm talking Milan as a collective in that goal that they scored on the midweek Bologna to win the game. Done and dusted. That's how Milan lost. Look at the Torino game. You mentioned it, right? A lot of self-inflicted wounds, a lot of lapses. A team that's not sharp, that's not focused in any aspect of the game, that only wants to get up when they're down, when the chips are down and they need to, when they're down 1-0 and they're down a player, like, we got to fight now, because if we don't fight, it's going to obviously show in the scoreline with this team, with the way they're playing. Because if you're down a player and you're playing the way we are, and these teams go up 3-4-0 on you, then it's obviously noticeable that you're not trying, you're dogging it, you really don't care, you mailed it in, the season you've given up on. And that's what I've seen in these past games. I could stomach when a team gets the better of you on a given match day, because it happens. It's football. It's happened to the best teams. It's happened to the worst teams. We've been on the receiving end of many matches, Martino, over the past couple of years, where Milan are playing good football, and then that team just comes in and say, you know what, credit to them. They came in and they brought the game. They brought it to Milan. They didn't play with fear. They went at Milan. Milan didn't have it on that day, but they had sort of a bounce back or a get right game afterwards. Milan don't do that. Milan don't do that. Coming into this game, Milan had not lost to Lazio in 4 meetings. A couple draws, obviously the one earlier on in the year. And I think the last defeat prior to today was the 4-0 game under Pioli a couple seasons ago.
Yeah. Wait, which one? I don't know.
I think it was the 4-0 game. Remember that? It was like
who?
Lazio. That was Lazio, right? So basically what I'm saying to you is, the way this team is playing right now, I don't have any expectations. Things that you'd expect from professional footballers representing this team, given how dire the situation is, I don't expect them to do it. And if you have those sort of expectations, I guess it becomes a little bit more digestible. Although, again, truthfully, as a Milan fan, it's kind of shameful watching this team. And I think it's proof in the pudding, the way the fans have been conveying their disgust and disdain for what has gone on this entire season. And that Bologna game, but from the coach and his comments in the aftermath, to the player performances, to the interview with Zlatan coming out, to everything in totality, it's been a complete disaster week. And this week has been a true indication of how far Milan have fallen.
I'm not here to take like victory laps to be right. The club is not good. The club is in a dire position, a really bad position. And the only thing I honestly care about, and you're right with everything that you said, but I kind of don't care about it, because at the end of the day, I've seen terribly run organizations, and a lot of Milan fans have seen really poor ran Milans, right? Prior to that turnaround for those few years. Nothing is changing. I have a rude awakening for many of you. If Forlani, Moncada, Zlatan stay, if Jerry Cardinale keeps the club, even if they hire Tade or Paratici, guys, stop. Just don't bother. You don't deserve to get your hopes up. You don't deserve to actually give them your money, your energy for something that clearly isn't going to change. It's not going to. It's fool's gold if you think so. Again, when this club was bought by Redbird, we hated the way that things were done in that first summer, right? It was still Elliott who controlled the club. They did a terrible job of even trying to help their product that they still partially owned, and still kind of do, because there's a loan that needs to be paid back. Okay. They don't do anything to fix that. Then we get into the situation in which we see Maldini sacked after doing a phenomenal job. Far better than anything these bozos and clowns have done. And that's what I'll do that. Until I'm a professional in the sense of I'm working for a major company again that covers Serie A and Milan, they're losers. They're pathetic. They're bozos. I think every single piece about how they've ran things have been without dignity, and it has been done without respect. It comes with this sort of, we're going to do what we want. We don't really care what the fans think. We don't care what the people before us have done. We're just going to do it this way. I'm not going to show up to anything, okay, Jerry? I'm going to do these interviews on the side with GQ. We're not going to have any stability within the team. Like, again,
A clear hierarchy.
when things are going right, you understand hierarchy. You don't have to question who's doing this, who's doing that. For Lonnie, all final decisions go by him, but he's not the one at the press conferences. When was the last time Forlani spoke publicly like this? Was maybe the Supercopa? We rarely hear from him. When it was under the Maldini regime, it was, oh, Gazidis has a comment, or Maldini has a comment, or Masada has something to say. Moncada in the background doing his job, doing what he has to do, right? You don't hear from him. You see Zlatan doing GQ magazine interviews. You see him talking pre-match. You see Conceição, you see Fonseca handling things terribly in the press. Not that they did it terribly. They were exposed to be handled terribly in the press. Conceição has to go out and publicly say, hey, I shouldn't be the one talking pre-match. I have to focus on the match. Someone else go and take care of it. Forlani, Zlatan, whoever else didn't even have a light bulb on in their head to say, oh, yeah, that should be our responsibility. The manager who is taking over a very rocky situation is right and shouldn't have to be going to talk to the press prior to a match. That is very important for us. Otherwise, we're going to be losing a lot of money. Guess what, guys? You lost a ton of money. You lost a ton of money because you couldn't advance or get top 8 in the Champions League. You lost a lot of money because you got eliminated early in the Champions League. You're now going to lose even more money because you're not making the Champions League. So every single decision since sacking Maldini has been a domino effect. And every decision after that has fallen into a worse spot. And that good faith that let's wait and see what this management can do, maybe, even though we really strongly dislike their decisions, let's give them a chance. That leash that we gave them was incredibly short. A lot of other people who don't understand or don't watch us or don't listen to us conflate us with defending Redbird and actually holding them accountable. We do two different things. We hold them accountable for the things that had happened. When they had arrived, we have nothing to judge them off of. We have no idea what's going to happen, right? And so when that is the case, we can't criticize something that hasn't even existed. However, we can criticize what we see and what goes down. And they now have a track record. Their track record is they don't know how to replace the people they get rid of. That goes from players, that goes to managers, that goes to directors, and even a CEO. And it all starts with the guy who doesn't even show up to the country. He hasn't been in Milan since September. Since September. It's burning at the stake. You are losing money hand over fist. You do not have a stadium project that you could hang your hat on for the future. What do you have? What direction is this heading in? And finally, the most important thing on the field is a fucking disaster. It's terrible. It's an unmitigated disgrace. It's the most pathetic season relative to expectations. Since when?
And finances, relative to finances too.
Since we were alive, Matt.
Yeah.
It's over. This project is done. No Milan fan, and listen, if Milan fans want to maybe keep some optimism, I respect you. I always respect people who want to keep optimism for the club. But when it comes to me specifically, I can't speak for you. I am done with this. I don't see it changing. This is not changing. There needs to be a sale or a drastic change in management where everyone is fired and the people that are brought in are completely different, proactive, future-looking, smart, ambitious people. Because right now, trying to keep the foundation that is pretty rocky within this club is going to backfire because they had the foundation and they completely ruined it. And now the entire house has collapsed and they think that they could still live in that house. They're a joke. They're actually the biggest embarrassment bar Manchester United in the sport. Seriously. I don't see how anyone could argue that at this point. Manchester United mask a lot of the embarrassing stuff that goes on at Milan. Milan are lucky to an extent. Serie A is very relevant, very irrelevant compared to what they used to be.
Yeah,
because they're just a big of a joke. I mean, seriously. I know you're not defending it. I know I'm rambling, but like these are kind of just my points for the whole episode. I don't have points.
yeah.
We could talk about the Lazio match. Anybody wanted to? No one wants to hear it. Stupid individuals, a manager who's losing his mind, management who don't know what to do, and the fans are protesting. And it hasn't stopped. And it's not going to stop. Like, you only have to hope that this guy has any self-awareness that he sells the club and realizes, hand up, I made a fucking mistake and I have to cut my losses.
I was in over my head, and he didn't really, as we basically know and have known for a while since he, bought the club, was he didn't understand what he was getting into. And I'm not saying from the financial sense. This guy's run. He's been involved in sports management, sports ownership for a substantial amount of time. He's got a track record with it, but it's a different animal when you're coming into uncharted territory relative to what he has done in his past. The fact that it's a huge club, a club that wants to be brave, wants to be ambitious, wants to take the next step, wants to get a stadium, wants to be back at previous heights. He hasn't grasped any of that still a couple years in. And if he hasn't grasped it now, with all the animosity when it comes to even the 125th anniversary event, where management have to cowardly go through a side door because they can't face the music. And you cast your players out there and your coach to go and deal with it for you and take all the brunt of the booze and all the sorts of things. Again, that's a reflection of this management and this ownership and this club in this current state. And things have gotten sour very quickly. I've given my thoughts on this entire thing. I don't want to keep regurgitating the same things. We can move on to Lazio if people truly want to understand, what went wrong in the game, and you guys want like a clear, unfiltered, honest perspective on the game. We're happy to do that for you. But I think truthfully, if you guys in the comments and those on Twitter and on our various social platforms that do engage with our content and know us and know what type of things we're going to say, I think it's pretty straightforward, cut and dry, that what we're going to potentially cover in a Lazio review is not going to be anything different than what you maybe have experienced in the Torino review or in the matches prior. It's a consistent issue with this team. They're all been laid out there over the past several months, dating back to even the beginning of the season, under multiple coaches, under basically two different groups of players. And until we see changes, until we see individuals who are directly involved in the build of this team and the decision-making of this team answer for their faults and answer for their mistakes, how, as fans, can we have any faith and trust that things are going to turn around? One win next week. I don't even know who we play next week, to be honest.
I think it's Lecce. Could be
right.
wrong.
One win against Lecce is not going to all of a sudden make everyone forget about the season.
Also a way to Lecce. So I think they drop points.
And they barely lost to Fiorentina, who are a pretty respectable team. So like, if you're Lecce, in our sort of mini Lecce preview, if you're Lecce and you're at home and you're like, man, this Milan team is down in the dumps. They're in the deep end right now. We're going after them. We're going after them. I have no clue what that game is going to hold for us. No clue. No clue. We can play our best 11 players. I do not care, because that best 11 group, as we saw today, as we saw against Bologna, it does not matter. The names that Milan trot out there on a given match day do not play as a team. They do not defend as a team. They do not sacrifice as a team. They do not, as Conte would always say, his famous spit blood and almost like, it's not morbid, die as a team, die as a group. They don't do that. This team does not sacrifice for one another. You don't see that energy. You don't see that grinta, that passion. You do not see it in this team in the performances.
No.
Period. And
No.
matches like today are even more, they get me more frustrated because it takes you going down a player and being down a goal to say, I know, now we're going to try. Now they were going back and forth. They were trying to counter. They were putting guys forward. They were trying to get balls in the box. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment. I really, truly don't have much more to say
No, I
about
don't.
what things are going on. But we can move on to Lazio if people want to hear, was the Pavlovic red card correct? Was the penalty correct?
Doesn't matter.
Does it matter?
Doesn't
Truly,
matter.
guys, doesn't matter. Like, I'm cool to do with it. Martino's, this is why we're here. We're here for the community. We're here for you.
I kind of like. I mean, listen. If you want more thoughts on the Lazio match, you can go to the Lazio post-match review. I'll say this with the Lazio thing. It's just another. It's a similar result, and the game was very similar to everything else that has happened.
Similar catastrophe.
It's again individual errors prevent Milan from even having an opportunity to do something, and they play their best when things are not going their way, which is not sustainable. And then on top of it, when things are even, they're terrible. They don't. The midfield is easily. I'm going to be straight up with everyone here. The midfield is the biggest problem. I've kind of gone back and forth on like the defensive side of things, and I don't really like a lot of the defenders.
Yeah.
But I'm having a really difficult time of watching every single game and sitting there saying to myself, what is that in the middle? I don't see it. I don't understand it. I can't grasp it. It's incredibly unbalanced. And it's unfortunate because if you got like a really smart director, like a Tony D'Amico, for example, that has proven stuff within Serie A, you could get the money that you've gotten from sales of players, sell a Teo Hernandez. I would also sell Mike Magnan. I would also sell Chukwueze. I would sell Ruben Loftus-Cheek. And right there on top of the CDK, Kalulu, Benacer money, Luca Romero, Daniel Maldini money, maybe even Colombo, Pobega, as well as other players. All of that is kind of a war chest. And what you could do with that is actually fix things. But guess what? Everything I said earlier. So moot point, right? You see where I'm coming from with this? It's really unfortunate because on an objective level, when you're taking the human emotion out of it and the lack of trust that I have for management and ownership and you have for management and ownership, you can kind of say to yourself, this is salvageable. We can fix this. But the odds of them fixing it on a scale of 0 to 100 are like 10%. And I think 10% is also generous. I don't see how Jerry Cardinale is going to manage to keep this team beyond 3 years or have a reasoning in his head that this doesn't become a big enough headache for him. Because eventually rent is due, Jerry. You have to pay Elliott. Yeah, what is the end game here for you? You're not going to make a profit at this point. What he has to do is what I guess Enrico was telling us is that you're going to have to get a minority investor in that is going to have to help stabilize things and then eventually have a full takeover, and then he might be able to recoup the money that he had spent. And that's really it, because it's just done. The project is done. What happened against Lazio today doesn't matter. What happened against Bologna and Torino does not matter. This has been going on for months on end. This went back. You saw it happening with Pioli last year.
Mm-hmm.
You just did. And I don't even fully blame him. I respect him so much for what he had done. And I still do. I don't have disdain towards Pioli. I just don't appreciate lying about how it went towards the end. I think a lot of some people were in denial about it. Others were infuriated and didn't even want to give the project a chance because of the things that have happened. I think this is finally the moment, these 3 games here, or even the Feyenoord yellow or red card, where everybody is literally on the same page as a whole. There was anti-Maldini people who were, oh, no, Maldini had to go. He didn't sell guys. He let guys walk for free. Clap it up. I hope you're happy. I hope you're happy because you wanted it. You asked for it. This is where we're at. Milan, nowhere near top 4. We're doing podcasts that are just repeating ourselves. And that's really it. There's not much left here to say. If you want to talk about something, Matt, we can. We might do something midweek for the Lecce match. I'm getting old, man. I'm getting old. I'm in my final days of my 20s. I don't care.
And time is also limited too. Like, truthfully, for us to I don't know about everyone in the comments. I can't speak for everybody. Can't speak for Martino, but on a personal level, things have been extremely busy with work as well. The finding the time to guys give you multiple podcasts and to give you guys more than an hour of reaction and say a lot of the same things. It's just like, without you guys, truthfully, I think me and Martino probably take a mini hiatus, but we really enjoy the conversation, at least, or being a place that you guys can kind of take some comfort in, kind of get some different perspective, and have a community. That's what we do it for. That's what we do it for. That's why we.
Yeah, I love our podcast community.
Yeah, truthfully.
I do like a lot of people on Twitter.
Yeah.
That place is just not what it used to be, and that's really unfortunate.
And that's usually why we resort to a lot of these honest opinions and perspectives here, because I think that
it's a better medium.
Things get misconstrued. Things get distorted, contorted.
People can't read
that favor one way of thinking over the other, and all of a sudden they kind of put you in a box as you're a hater of a player, or you hate the club, or you think this, or you think that. People who have known what me and Martino have put out here with this podcast for the better part of 7-8 years, through some really bad years, through some really good years and really fun years as content creators, but more importantly and more first and foremost as fans, those who have seen the work we put out, the conversations we try to create, the community we try to create, know where we come from. We really truly want the best for this team. It just becomes a little bit more challenging and more difficult when we see things taking shape as they are, and doing so in a very short period of time. And we can give you guys the weekly podcast, and I think we will continue to do so. But truthfully, without you guys, I think things like this podcast, this recording, the reaction we just did, it's like, for what? To say the same thing that we said 2 days ago, 3 days ago after the Bologna game, and 3-4 days before that at the Torino game. It's like,
that's why I basically just waited. I was like, just do it all.
Yeah, in one. Like 27 minutes in, we haven't touched on the Lazio game because
maybe
things that happened in Bologna.
Okay. Ready for your quick summarization of the Lazio game. Milan come out, get dominated in the first half. They allow a goal that should have never been allowed in the first place. Yeah. They don't get a penalty that goes their way. Milan completely dominated in that half. There was a quick substitution of Yunus Musa, which is an embarrassment for Musa, for Conceição. João Felix comes on. I mean, anytime you make a first half substitution and it has nothing to do with the health of the player, that says everything you need to know about that situation there. Milan come out in the second half. They were playing a little bit better with not that sort of urgency. Then Pavlovic gets a red card. Milan are down a man while also being down a goal. Then they start playing. Then they start showing signs of life. Chukwueze scores an equalizer. And then again, another boom shot to the brain by Milan of their own accord. Mike Maignan commits a penalty. Don't really care what you thought if it was or wasn't a penalty. Pedro scores the winner in stoppage. That's it. Milan get embarrassed again at home. Oh, and by the way, the Curva was asking once again for the owner to sell the team, and the owner has not been in the country since September. That's your summarization of what happened against Lazio. Milan drop more points. They fall behind Roma in the standings. They play Lecce next week. There. Hope you enjoyed that. Other than that, again, guys, please follow and subscribe to the channel at That Milan Podcast. We have that in the description there. Follow That Milan Pod on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. And again, obviously, the YouTube channel. You can follow me everywhere at Martino Puccio, at Martino_Puccio, Martino Puccio 95 on TikTok. You can follow Matt and his brother at AC Milan Bros on Twitter, at Matt_Santangelo on Twitter is his private account. You can go on there and shit on him for rightfully calling out Teo Hernandez, right? Because fuck logic these days. Other than that, also don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple and Spotify at That Milan Podcast. Give us a 5-star rating. vent to us on there as well. Vent to us in the comment sections. Give us everything that you want. Sorry that this episode was short, but you can see why. And I guess to wrap it up, we have to give a shout out to our great friends in the content community that are MLM Podcast with Max and Gio and Fabio for Milan Milan Coast to Coast, Milan Weekly Podcast with Vinny, Steve, and Jan, and obviously Presidente Marcello. Again, also go and follow all the stuff that Milan Club New York City does as well with Franco, who's a good friend of ours. To go to who else? So I'm thinking here. Marco. Kush has been on vacation, thankfully for him. So go and sub to Kush's channel, Marco's podcast. Milan Fan TV. They do a great job as well. Go and listen to their podcast. They have like the best videos on TikTok. Those two brothers, they just have monotonistic, like just speaking tones every single time. And they're just like, they're the best. Their energy is exactly where every Milan's fan energy should be right now, and that's sort of lifeless. And I say that in a complimentary way, guys. But yeah, and Sempre Milan's podcast. Torgrud, Maddie, Ali, they all do a great job, and they give everything objectively. Isaac is a great job as a writer as well. Really not much left to say. Keep strong, everyone. This isn't the end. There will be other days and other matches and other seasons to win trophies. So hopefully Milan turn it around sooner than later. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.